We used to be passionate. I think. Or maybe I've just convinced myself we were. Now it's routine, quiet, predictable, a sequence of gestures that mimic love without feeling like it. James wakes up at 6:30 sharp, brushes his teeth with the same mint-flavored toothpaste, kisses my forehead, and disappears into the hum of his carefully structured life. An engineer. Logical. Practical. Emotionally absent. I'm Elise. 31. Married 5 years. No kids. No chaos. No warmth. I work remotely, mostly writing technical manuals for software no one reads. Sometimes I wonder if anyone would notice if I replaced all the text with gibberish. The silence in our house isn't heavy, just ever-present. We speak when necessary. We eat in parallel, not together. The last time we made love, James asked if I had finished before we started. I laughed. He didn't get the joke. Then came Malik. Tall, confident, and annoyingly magnetic. He's the trainer at the gym James insisted I joined 6 months ago, thinking a new routine might energize me. I was skeptical until I saw Malik. He wasn't just physically imposing, though that was hard to ignore. His voice had a rhythm, like a song that knew how to pull you in. He called everyone boss or queen, and when he said it to me, it didn't feel generic. It felt earned. The first few sessions were professional. Strict. Sweat, breath, and form corrections. But over time, the sessions got longer. He'd ask questions, real ones. What do you do? What makes you laugh? When's the last time someone made you feel seen? James never asked those things. One Thursday, after a particularly grueling session, I sat on the bench near the exit, pretending to scroll through my phone while catching my breath. Malik walked by, paused, then doubled back. You good? He asked, offering me his water bottle. I'm fine, I said, taking it anyway. He sat beside me. Close. Not touching, but close enough that I felt it. You've got more in you, he said quietly. People forget what they're capable of when they're too comfortable. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The air between us thickened, not with words but with something more dangerous. Possibility. That night, as James recited his weekly expense report over dinner, I nodded, smiled in the right places, and felt Malik's breath in my memory. I tried to wash it off in the shower. It clung to me anyway. The next morning, I found myself putting on lip gloss before heading to the gym. I hadn't worn lip gloss in 2 years. I told myself it was nothing. Just a harmless crush. A flicker. A spark in a cold room, but deep down, I knew. Something had shifted. I'd been seen, and once someone sees you, truly sees you, it becomes hard to go back to being invisible. Not an accident. Not a brush or a graze. A deliberate, firm placement of Malik's hand on my lower back as I struggled to balance during squats. You're stronger than you think, he said, his voice low, intimate. Trust yourself. I did. More than I should have. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of suppressed smiles, longer workouts, and conversations that crept far beyond gym etiquette. He told me about his past, raised by a single mom, worked 2 jobs since 16, loved poetry more than protein shakes. I told him about my marriage, carefully edited to seem fine but distant. He didn't pry. He didn't have to. He watched me, watched the way I twisted my ring when I lied to myself, watched how I bit my lip when I wanted something I couldn't say. It was maddening being seen like that. James never looked at me that way. James looked through me. Friday night, the storm hit. Rain slammed the windows as thunder stitched its way across the sky. James had gone out of town for a conference last minute. He left a note, back Sunday. Love you. No call. No kiss goodbye. The power flickered once, then vanished completely. I lit candles. I paced the kitchen. And then I did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't. I texted Malik. Me. Power's out. Feels like a horror movie. Malik, need me to swing by and slay the monsters. Me, you joke, but honestly, I wouldn't mind the company. 10 minutes later, he was at my door. He didn't bring an umbrella. Water glistened on his skin, soaking into the black t-shirt that clung to every muscle like second skin. He stepped inside, and suddenly the room felt smaller. Warmer. Louder, though neither of us spoke. I handed him a towel. He took it, but didn't use it. Just stared at me. Why do you invite me? He asked. I don't know, I whispered. He stepped forward. You sure? I wasn't. I was drowning in uncertainty and the ache of what I'd become. But I nodded anyway. The kiss was inevitable. Slow, deep, unapologetic. Like he'd been waiting for permission and finally got it. His hands were everywhere, strong, assured, reverent. There was no hesitation. No stuttering apologies or broken routine. Just hunger. Intent. We didn't make it to the bedroom. The candlelight danced across the walls as we collided, bodies speaking the truth we buried for weeks. It was reckless. It was wrong, and I wanted every second of it. Later, tangled in a blanket on the couch, I stared at the ceiling, breath shallow, guilt creeping in like fog through a broken window. He pulled me close, kissed my shoulder. Still scared? He asked. Yes, I said. But I wasn't scared of him. I was scared of how right it felt. I used to think my marriage was solid, stable, if not thrilling. My husband, Omar, is a dedicated man. Hardworking, responsible, always doing what needed to be done to keep our lives comfortable. His job at the logistics firm demanded long hours, and though I missed him, I never complained. I understood. At least, I told myself I did. Our home was quiet most days, just the soft ticking of the clock and the hum of appliances filling the silence. I spent my time managing the household, dabbling in freelance work, and trying to ignore the growing emptiness that clung to the walls like dust I couldn't quite sweep away. Then came Tariq, Omar's younger brother. He had just moved back to town after a messy breakup and needed a place to land. Omar, ever the dutiful brother, offered our guest room without hesitation. "He's family," Omar had said, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "He won't be any trouble." First, he wasn't. Tariq was charming in a way that felt effortless. He'd always been the more outgoing sibling. Where Omar was stoic and reserved, Tariq was laughter, energy, and quick wit. He filled the silence of the house in ways I hadn't realized I craved. He'd help out with groceries, offer to cook dinner, and linger in the kitchen while I worked, swapping stories that made me laugh more than I had in weeks. Felt harmless, comforting even, a breath of fresh air in a life that had started to feel suffocating. Still, there were moments. Small, almost imperceptible shifts in tone or glance. Like the time he told me, "You deserve more attention than Omar gives you." He'd said it with a grin, almost teasing, but his eyes had lingered a second too long. I brushed it off. I had to. It was probably nothing, just Tariq being Tariq. But something inside me stirred. A flicker of attention I didn't want to admit I enjoyed. I told myself it was just the novelty of someone noticing me, seeing me, not just as a wife holding the fort, but as a woman. Then Omar asked me to keep an eye on Tariq while he was away on a week-long business trip. "He's been a bit off since the breakup," Omar said, concern knitting his brow. "Just make sure he's okay, yeah?" I nodded, masking the unease rising in my chest. I didn't have the words for it yet, but I sensed a shift. Something about to unfold. Something I wasn't sure I was ready for. As Omar packed his suitcase that night, I stood in the doorway watching him, wondering how we got here. So distant, so distracted. I told myself everything was fine. In the wake of Omar's departure, the house grew quiet yet strangely charged, as if each corner held a secret waiting to be revealed. Tariq's presence, once merely a benign family guest, began to take on a more intricate hue with each passing day. Initially, his visits were sporadic and unassuming, but soon he arrived each morning with a gentle knock and a warm, lingering smile that seemed to say he cared more than he should. I found myself both comforted and unnerved by the subtle intensity in his gaze, a silent invitation to a conversation deeper than small talk. At first, I rationalized his extra attention as nothing more than kindness. He helped with minor repairs, prepared a fresh pot of coffee, and even shared stories that brightened the long hours of solitude. His laughter filled the empty rooms, momentarily dispelling the loneliness that had crept into my life. Yet beneath that congenial exterior, there was an undercurrent of something unspoken. Every compliment he offered and every lingering glance slowly eroded the boundaries I had carefully maintained. One dreary afternoon, when rain drummed softly on our windows, Tariq and I found ourselves alone in the living room. The soft light cast shadows that danced around us as he spoke with an earnestness that left little room for pretense. "You deserve to be cherished," he said quietly, his tone gentle yet charged with emotion. His words struck me like a spark in the darkness, a moment of warmth that both comforted and alarmed me. I felt a rush of validation, a reminder that I was seen and valued, even if only for a fleeting instant. In the days that followed, our interactions grew more intimate. A light touch on my arm as he passed by, a shared smile over an inside joke, and a look that lingered long after our conversation had ended. All these small gestures accumulated into an emotional closeness that I had not anticipated. Each encounter left me in a state of inner conflict. Excitement battled with guilt, as I tried to convince myself that these moments were merely harmless escapes from a monotonous reality. Yet, the intensity of my response betrayed me, hinting at a vulnerability I had long concealed. By the time the week had unfolded, it became painfully clear that nothing would ever be the same. The once innocuous exchanges had transformed into an undercurrent of desire and confusion. I stood at a precipice, torn between the security of a familiar life and the dangerous allure of uncharted emotions. As I watched the rain streak down the window, I knew that the path ahead would force me to confront the deepest parts of my heart, a confrontation that promised to redefine everything I once held dear.